Well, on today's episode of the Post-Christian Podcast, I'm excited to have with me Jason Jaggard. How you doing, Jason?
I'm good, Eric. Thanks for having me on your show.
Oh my goodness, I'm excited to talk to you about your book, Beyond High Performance. I actually often talk to folks about the books that will be coming out, so it's fun to actually talk to someone after having read the book, highlighted all through the book, started referring people to the book. So I'm just excited to talk to you about this. We go way back. I think we even
Yes.
met 20 years ago.
20. Can I tell a story from my side?
I would love to hear it. Yes, please.
And I want to say to people who are listening to this, Eric Bryant has had a huge impact in my life, and he led me when we were working at Mosaic together, and we'll probably talk more about that later. But every leader is a work in progress. But when he met me, I was like a super work in progress. And so he was very patient, very kind, very giving, and I would not be a lot of the good things that I love about my life have come from that environment, that season. And so, Eric, thank you for investing in me, and I'm very grateful, and I'm excited to share whatever I can to help the folks who you are influencing as well.
Well, you're incredibly kind to say that. I mean, I have just loved watching your impact around the world, starting companies, helping people really magnify their capacity. And I'm a huge believer in leadership coaches, even for pastors, church leaders, to have a coach just to be able to see themselves maybe differently. But you've introduced some things here that were brand new to me. And I want to talk about that for a little bit, because you say at the very beginning of the book, you don't have to want less, and you don't have to destroy yourself in the pursuit of more. And so then you go in to talk about, beyond high performance is someone that is more of a meta performer. So talk for a moment, just what is a meta performer?
Yeah. So, the technical definition of a meta performer is someone who's constantly redefining what high performance means for them. And so, with the quote that you said, by the way, so I'm not going to geek out too much, but it means so much to me that you read my book. Like, thank you for reading it. Thank you for you highlighted things, and you've written books. You know what it's like when anyone reads your book. It just means so much, and that someone like you who played the role that you did in my life, that you read my book, it just feels really good. So,
and it's a really good book, Jason. It's really good book.
So I find that with our clients, and we have hundreds of clients all over the world, and I think you can say this as well, and I would certainly say it about myself, is all of us have this sense that we can do more, that we could do more, maybe even that we should do more. But that's also scary, right? Because we like the lives that we have most of the time, and we don't want to ruin. And frankly, I think we've seen examples of, especially in church work, people who have gone after more and maybe blew things up or ruin things, or those types of deal. And so, how do you? That's the question we wanted to answer: is how do you? I think in one phrase in the book we say, how do you burn bright without burning out? And what I've also discovered is most people, one of the reasons why they feel that way is because we try to accomplish more with the same thinking, the same habits, the same patterns, the same ideas that got us to where we are today. And that almost never works. And so oftentimes when we go into trainings, we say, hey, we're going to help you get more done. And people then they freak out because they're like, well, if in order to get more done, we have to work harder. I'm going to have to work more hours. So then we say, well, what if we could help you get more done in less time? And then people perk up. And that's what coaching does. And I know that you're a coach and you're doing coaching now. And that, man, if you're listening to this and it doesn't have to be a coach or even professionalized, but if you don't have people in your life who are helping you intentionally upgrade the ways that you think and behave and your habits, man, you're just leaving all sorts of value on the table.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. I actually shared recently at our church here in Austin about my first experience at Mosaic. And for me, that person gave me a chance and kind of spoke into my life was Gerardo.
Yeah.
And if you remember Gerardo. And so
Gerardo Marty, yeah.
Yes, that's right. So I kind of had this phrase that, we all need a Gerardo and we need to be a Gerardo to someone else, exactly what you're saying there. But one of my favorite lines in the book is meta performers turn the impossible into Tuesday. I just thought that was great. By the way, your humor comes throughout the book, in addition to the insights. But one of my favorite parts is how you reframed work. You know, we could describe ourselves as prisoners, mercenaries, missionaries. You pose this idea of becoming more like an athlete, and you introduce
Yeah.
the 100,000 hour rule. Talk about the 100,000 hour rule.
Well, when we talk about work, when most people think about whether they're happy or unhappy at work, oftentimes they're talking about their relationships. With your boss, like you were my boss. So, there's that element, or your colleagues. David Arcos was a colleague of mine, or Gerardo Marty, and those types of folks, or the people who like volunteer on your teams. Like Rosanna Tomiuk was a volunteer, and we
Mhm.
worked together, whatever. But what we discover in coaching, the most important relationship you have at work is your relationship with work. And so most people don't realize that they not only do they have relationships at work, but they have relationships with work. And that's where we use those different models is like some people relate to work like a prisoner, like they have to go to work, or like a mercenary, like they go to work because it pays the bills, but if someone offers you, more money someplace else, whatever, et cetera, et cetera. And so where we use the 100,000 hour rule, most people know the 10,000 hour rule from Malcolm Gladwell, I think Eric Erickson and others. But the reality is you're going to spend, and this is kind of depressing, but you're gonna spend 100,000 hours in your lifetime working. And so and you can, if you have a prisoner mindset and you think about that, you're like, wow, that sounds awful. If you have a
Mm.
missionary mindset, you might think, well, that sounds lucrative. you know. But what we really want to suggest in the 100,000 hour rule is how can you maximize those 100,000 hours to become a certain kind of person and to have a certain kind of impact in the world, and to really look at that not as a place just to slave away or to make some green and live hard, work hard, or whatever, but really to grow. And that's the athlete's mindset: is how do you relate to work like an athlete, where every meeting you lead is a chance for you to practice becoming a certain kind of leader. Every
Mm.
conflict you have, every moment with and this applies both inside of work and outside of work. I mean, with athletes, we talk about this, and I'll shut up here in a second. But with athletes, when you think about an athlete, most of what you think about is them performing in front of an audience with crowds and stadiums, and there's some of the folks who are in our firm are Stanley Cup winning hockey players, and people who graduated from our programs are like Olympic athletes and multiple gold medal athletes, and when you think about like Lauren Holiday, who graduated from our program, you see her on a podium. If you Google her, it's all public, but most of what athletes do is unbelievably private.
Mm.
All of Lauren's practice, there's no crowds, there's no audience, no one cares. When you're going to the gym, no one cares. There's no cameras or anything unless you're weird. So what is it? And in the same way, Eric, I've known you for a long time. I love the way that you father. I love the way that you husband. And but your best moments as a dad, no one sees.
Mhm.
Your best moments as a husband, when you like forgive, when you want to be bitter or whatever, like no one's ever gonna know. And yet those are your greatest moments. Those That's what creates your greatness. And so to have an athlete's mindset is in work, in every meeting you have or every email you send, you're practicing becoming extraordinary. And in your private life, in every conversation you have with the spouse, or every moment you volunteer your church, or if you're on staff, every moment you go on vacation, or you're practicing becoming a certain kind of person. And so coaching helps people embrace an athlete's mindset
Mm.
and really give their best of their life, so that someday at the end of their life, they can really feel like they left it all on the field.
Yeah, I love that. And just this stretch to increase your capacity. I actually went through the book and took some of what I highlighted and brought out some of those questions just to start using with my team,
Oh, thank you.
because you really are good at reframing just maybe things we've thought about, but kind of stretching it into a new way. I always thought you were really good at that. Of course, I were mentored by Erwin, who you
Yeah.
mentioned in the acknowledgments. He's really good at that.
Yes. Yeah.
But
He's the best.
one of my favorites, you said this: healthy teams and communities aren't just about whether you're in the right community for you, but whether you are the right kind of community for others. Talk about the importance of a team, having a team, being a good teammate, designing a community that brings out the best in others.
Yeah. Well, I want to quote one of my mentors. His name's Eric Bryant. And he said one time to me 20 years ago, if everyone shows up to a group looking for a hug, no one's going to get one. But if
Mm.
everyone shows up looking to give a hug, everyone will get a hug, and there'll be even more to spare. And I think about that all the time. And when I was writing that chapter I think is on teams and the importance of community. Like becoming an extraordinary person is always a team sport, and we are
Mhm.
fanatical about that.
Mm.
at Novus Global and the Institute. And, you know, most people, when they're in communities or at a job, are unintentionally, I think they don't necessarily mean to do this, but it is consumptive. It's like,
Mm,
how is this job providing for me? um, how can I use things to make me better? How is this
mm,
impacting me? And usually when you hear people tell stories about, I see this on Instagram all the time, like, don't listen to the haters. It's always so interesting when people on Instagram say don't listen to the haters. I'm like, who's hating you? Like, as far as I know, I don't think anyone hates me. I have people who are annoyed by me, but I don't think I have any. I'm not that important. Like, I haven't earned the role of anyone in anyone's the villain of anyone's life, as far as I know. And so there is kind of this, like, if your life is struggling, it's because it's somebody else's fault. It's because there's the
mm,
haters, there's all these people, and it's their fault that your life is in a certain way. And we wanted to flip that script a little bit and be like, hey, like, it's not just about you finding the right community for you. It's
mhm,
about you being and creating the right community for others. And if you're always looking for the right community for you, you'll be probably community homeless for a while. We know people who bounce from
mm,
church to church to church or whatever, and nothing's ever good enough.
mm, mm,
They're always looking for that perfect church, whatever. And man, that's a classic recipe, not only for loneliness, but an atrophy of ability, because you can't
mm.
incubate your gifts by yourself. And so you're just looking for
Yeah.
this thing that doesn't exist. So if you can flip that, and if you're able to flip that and say, hey, I'm not looking for the perfect community, I'm looking to create community with others. Well, then you will not only have community for the rest of your life, but you will become a certain kind of person that you'll be really proud of, and more powerful, and have a greater impact, and not for nothing, but create more wealth and all those types of things. So it's just a more powerful way of looking at how to build community.
Well, in the section on ownership and the way that blame can get in the way, and the
Yeah.
importance of feedback, maybe give us a little bit of what you share on the importance of ownership and being able to receive good feedback and hard feedback too.
Yeah. Well, I think we have a chapter on love, and that's where we talk about feedback. And we define love. It's not the only way to define love. So love is obviously a multifaceted diamond, and there's lots of scriptures that talk about love from different perspectives. And so, but one of the facets of the diamond that doesn't get a lot of press is this idea of fierce advocacy. And that's very apropos when it comes to leadership. To lead others is to be fierce advocates for them, for other people. And that fierce word is important to us at the firm, because coaching is about uh, believing in people sometimes more than they believe in themselves, and believing in people so fiercely that it's uncomfortable for them. I
Mm,
think that Jesus was really good at that. People felt radically accepted by him, um, but also he called things out of people that were uncomfortable. you
mhm,
know I can't imagine what Peter was feeling when he was like, come and follow me, and I will make you influencers of men and women. That's uncomfortable to live into, to step into. And
mm,
so how do we do that? And part of that is feedback. Whenever one of the things I say in the book that has really struck a chord with readers is, whenever we withhold feedback from people, which I am prone to do, and I think a lot of leaders are prone to do, especially in faith communities, when we hold feedback back from each other, what we're really saying is, I don't love you. I don't
mm,
love you enough to be honest with you. I don't love you enough to share this perspective as a mechanism of helping you get to where you want to go, or where God has called you to go.
mm,
And so we have a vision of the firm of what would be possible, and coaching can be a part of this. What would be possible if people were committed to giving each other feedback with a lens of humility and love and
mm,
advocacy. And by the way, you know, uh, some of the reasons why I get to do what I do now is because of feedback you've given me.
mm,
And imagine if you would have withheld that. Now I know
mm.
you probably withheld some feedback, and I might, maybe I'm grateful for that. But you gave me feedback, and I remember that feedback, and I took it to heart. And maybe
Mm,
I didn't like it at first, but every time we withhold feedback from people, we're slowing down their
mm,
growth curve.
mm.
And I'm so grateful, that you, Eric, and Erwin, and others had the courage and loved me enough to give me feedback, and that helped me get to where I am, and hopefully helps me get beyond where I am.
Well, it's incredibly important. I mean, even Jesus, when you read, the kindness he showed the sinner and how he would rebuke the religious leader. And sometimes you read those passages and think, man, Jesus was not very nice to them. But it actually worked. Like
Yeah,
Nicodemus, Joseph of Arimathea, like they needed that kind of truth to come around.
that's right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and this is something I think you do very well. I think Erwin does it well. There are other people we know and respect who do this well. Um, it's you know you don't read the scriptures as it is; you read the scriptures as you are. And so
Mm,
I think people, I just imagine how many, let's say, men have justified violence because Jesus, made a
mm,
whip and drove out the tax collectors,
right.
kind of a deal. And so it's really easy to weaponize the more powerful moments of Jesus and misapply them.
Mm,
And at the same time, I think you and I've seen others, and I remember I was in a coaching training one time with one of my other mentors where I saw him like come at somebody, and he said very intense and very hard and very disruptive things. But I felt that guy's love. I felt his big heart.
mm,
And I was like, oh, if you read a transcript of this, it would look abusive, you know, not like in a clinical way, but just like generally, like
right.
that's not,
Right.
but if you to be there and watch it happen in real time, you see the tears in his eyes and you
Mm,
see his fierce compassion and belief in the person he was confronting, and the
mm,
person who's he's confronting, you can see them receive it as love.
mm,
It was a beautiful defining moment for me. And I think, the more connected you are to love, and the more loving people perceive you to be, the more willing they are to hear the hard stuff.
yeah.
And now I'm kind of just talking to myself. Like, I need to turn my volume up on love, and
Mm,
it gives you freedom to then say things a little more harshly because people know that you're saying it for their benefit.
yeah. No, that's good. Well, you include 6 values in the book,
Yeah.
and they spell an acronym: Go Live.
Yes.
Uh,
Thank you for saying it right.
well, growth, ownership, love, integrity, vision, energy. Talk about how they all work together, how they expand on each other, how they all can point towards wisdom. I just loved how you summarized the entire book there at the end.
Oh yeah, well we talked. So one of my favorite chapters that no one else likes but me is the bridge between part one and part two.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we talk about we talk about unidoxical thought,
Mm-hmm.
paradoxical thought. So most people kind of see things from their perspective, and their way is the right way, and I'm guilty of that as well. It's very difficult to not be that way. Then you have like the next level up, which is paradoxical thought. That's where you can hold two conflicting ideas in your head at the same time. And then we coin a phrase in the book called multidoxical thought, which is where
Mm-hmm.
you're able to hold an ecosystem of paradoxes together all at the same time. And you know what? If you're a spiritual leader and you're listening to this, that is your job description. You are. I think Andy Stanley says it's not a problem to solve; it's a tension to manage. Like
Mm-hmm.
leadership, especially spiritual leadership, is navigating all these paradoxes. And so those values you just mentioned: growth, ownership, love, integrity, vision, and energy, those are all paradoxes to us. Like, sometimes with growth, you got to slow down to speed up. With love, you got to risk it to have it. With energy, you got to work out to have energy, which is crazy because when I first started working out, it just totally drained me. But now it's one of the best parts of my day. So there's all these paradoxes of leadership, and then culturally, how do you teach people? One is to value those paradoxes and to see them as paradoxes versus unidoxical islands. And how do you invite people into the dance of the tension of that in a way to where you can solve problems faster together with more? And the word you use is wisdom. And so the last chapter of the book, which I think is what you're referring to originally, is the most important chapter to me. There aren't any coined phrases there, so but because I like coined phrases, and we talk about this idea, and I totally ripped this off. So the Bible winks at the scriptures because we wrote it we wanted to read it to where if a person of faith read it, they'd be like, oh, I see what you're doing. I see where you're
Oh
getting
yeah.
this.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and then if a person who is not familiar with the scriptures or maybe even antagonistic towards that kind of space, they could still find a lot of value in it. And so,
Yeah.
by the way, if you're in spiritual leadership and you're looking for a book that's a bridge,
It's a
um,
great example of one. Yeah, I love it. And all my friends and family that don't know Jesus, this is my gift for them at
uh,
Christmas.
that means the world to me. And mine too. We have clients who we and honestly, I learned this at Mosaic, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Um, I can't remember. I'm sure I don't remember you or Erwin or others, David Arcos or others saying this explicitly. Maybe I just caught it between the lines. But too often, spiritual leaders are preaching and speaking, giving answers to questions that people who are far from God are not asking.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what I discovered in spiritual leadership at Mosaic when I was there, and you guys graciously let me, play and contribute, was, man, if I can help people who are like quote irreligious, I guess, if I can help people, anybody really, but if I can help people start asking questions like, what does it mean to live an extraordinary life? Or what does it mean to really explore what I'm capable of? Or what does it mean to what's my purpose? What's my meaning in the world? And how do I experience as much meaning and purpose and beauty in my life as possible? It's a John 10:10. How do I have
Mm-hmm.
life and a better life than I could ever dream of? Then all of a sudden, God becomes very relevant,
Mm-hmm.
and it is impossible for a person to pursue the extraordinary life and not bump into
Hmm.
God in some kind of tangible way.
Yeah.
And I feel like I feel like that's part of your legacy, Eric, and certainly Mosaic's. And so this book, in many ways, is our attempt to inspire and entice people to ask what we think are the most important questions in
Mm.
life that God actually would love to be a part of helping you wrestle with.
Yeah.
And that the only way to really answer them, I think, is to wrestle with God well. So all that to say, the last chapter is about nobility,
I
and
love it.
we ripped that off from Proverbs 31,
Yeah.
and that's become kind of defining attributes of the search of my life is what does it mean to be noble, and
Yeah.
that's what we leave the readers with.
I love it. Well, Novus Global, you have the Meta Performance Institute, the name of the book, Beyond High Performance. I'll be giving away free copies to some of you who are
Hey,
listening. Sign up for the newsletter there at my website. Last question, which, by the way, I don't know if you knew this or remember this, but, all those years ago when we were in LA together, you'd babysit my kids
yes.
and you were their favorite. Upon request, we'd get Jason Jaggard to come
Oh,
by.
that's great.
Now they're 24 and 21. It's just amazing how
That's
quickly time
crazy.
flies.
That's
But
crazy.
I was fascinated by the fact that in your company, everyone all the time is on a performance improvement plan, and
Yep.
everyone, these
Yep.
executive coaches, has a coach. Talk about
Yep.
how important that is, which, by the way, another great resource is your podcast, Beyond
Oh,
High Performance. The Ed Catmull interview
yeah.
was
Isn't
fascinating.
that
Yeah.
fun?
Oh,
Oh man. Some other
just,
time I'll tell you how I met him.
love it.
So much fun. Yeah, I love our podcast too. Thank you. And by the way, I'm not on the podcast most of the time. I think I'm on like 30 to 40% of the episodes. The other episodes are all done by our top coaches. And so
It's
I
great.
I, I learn from them. I can't wait for episodes to drop so that I can take notes and learn
Love
from our
it.
coaches the same way that hopefully sometimes people learn from me. But so the performance improvement plan thing that came from, I was at this event and the head of HR for Netflix was the former head of HR for Netflix was speaking, and performance improvement plans are funny because usually you get put on one when you're in trouble, and that's weird because well, and they're important, so you can have a paper trail so you don't get sued, when you let somebody go or whatever. But that struck me as bizarre because like, who doesn't want to improve their performance?
Mm-hmm.
Like I want to get better. I want to. I'm a beginner at being a CEO. I've only been doing this for a couple of years, and I want to improve my performance as a CEO. And I want to, and every coach in our firm wants to improve their performance as a coach because the better they get as a coach, usually the more money they make, and also the bigger the difference you make. And so, Trisha, our COO, or Joseph Barkley, he's the president of the institute. They want to get better, and everybody wants to improve. So why not have a performance improvement plan for everyone, since that's what we all want to do around here anyway? And so, pretty quickly, we created a culture where everyone's getting coached. Everyone has like quote a performance improvement plan. Everyone has the ways they're explicitly trying to grow. And by the way, what we suggest is don't ever hire a coach who doesn't have a coach. Like this,
Mm-hmm.
it's a weird thing. And when pastors don't have a pastor, that's when all
Mm.
sorts of not great stuff
Great way to
uh,
say it. Yeah.
can happen, right? And so it's the same thing. And so we practice what we preach, not only because it's good marketing, but because we really fiercely believe in our own potential, and we want to get as much of that out as we can before we die. And so
Mm-hmm.
coaching is a great way to do that, and performance improvement plans are a great way to do that. And it creates a great culture to where now you don't have to be timid about saying, hey, I think you could add this to your performance improvement plan, or hey, you could take this to your coach or whatever. It just creates a culture where we're always trying to grow.
I love it. Well, Jason, you've done a great job with the book. Really appreciate your investing in us from a distance. Thank you for all you're doing for really advancing good in the world. You've always been great at that, even when you were working with college students back in the day. But
Yeah.
thank you, Jason. Really amazed at what God's doing in and through you. Thanks for taking the time with us.
Yeah. Thanks, Eric. And if you're listening to this and, Eric's coaching now, reach out to him. I think he's got some other folks he's doing some stuff with. To be around Eric Bryant is to have your life get better. And so do what you can to get closer to his orbit. Thanks, Eric. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Jason.